Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Keira Proctor and I'm the Managing Director of the A. Proctor Group Limited, and this is our 6th webinar of 2021. If you've missed any of our series, you can go back and review them all through our Learning Hub at www.proctorgroup.com or right here on our YouTube channel. At our Learning Hub, you can also book in for follow-up appointments with our team of experts or request product samples and information packs. Today we have another special guest presentation, this time from Rosanna Lawn, Global Brand and Strategic Partnerships Director for Project Etopia, who will be discussing their collaborative approach to delivering a net zero carbon, system-based approach to the built environment. We'll then take a look at how we at the A. Proctor Group are working with our customer base from the design stage to on-site to integrate high-performance fabric technologies into both new and existing designs. Finally, we'll finish up with our usual Q&A session, where I'll be joined by Rosanna Lawn alongside our team of in-house experts. So now, let's pass over to Rosanna to start today's webinar.
Etopia build technology-led eco-buildings of the future that give back to our planet. Etopia is committed to teaching individuals around the world how to live more environmentally friendly and build sustainable communities. Etopia has developed new technologies and products, changing the approach to the built industry completely. Etopia plant trees to achieve a carbon neutral status. We are Etopia.
Good morning everyone and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for Proctor Group for inviting me down. My name is Rosanna Lawn and I'm the Brand and Strategic Partnerships Director at Project Etopia. And I'm here to talk to you today about how Project Etopia as a company have innovated and partnered within the built environment and other industries to drive a message for sustainability and to create products that are available for not just ourselves but other developers in the industry who are looking to go net zero or start their journey on net zero, especially to align with the new future home standard and how we can really achieve that. So my role at Etopia is quite dynamic. It's working across all of the business subsidiaries to align the message with policy, partnerships and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And this is really to transform the way that people approach this subject. The company itself consists of 5 companies and I'm working across all of these with, in an advisory position with the CEOs on key strategy areas of the business, including launches of the companies, products, rebranding, messaging, and helping create their individual brands whilst ensuring that they all feed into the wider vision of Etopia Group. So I have a background in development. I'm a chartered surveyor. I used to run an investment and development business in London. I have my own not-for-profit in the industry as well. And I've brought all of that kind of knowledge of both technical understanding of the industry and my knowledge of building brands and business to really, capitalise and maximise on what we do at Etopia and to to try and debunk the confusing message that could come with all of the incredible things that we do here. So Etopia are at the forefront of inventing all-in-one solutions for a more sustainable, efficient, affordable and resilient approach to house building. We wanted to think beyond construction methods to optimise how energy, construction and intelligent technologies can be integrated to ensure that the product is not only modern for today, but for many years to come. So Etopia stands for Economic and Environmental Utopia. We realised very early on to create a utopian-like world, you have to have a good balance of economics, is the product affordable, is it scalable? But with that, you have to be very careful and aware of the environmental impact. So, sustainability, what effect does this have on the planet? And social acceptability, is it versatile? Will it apply in different regions? Do people want to buy it? So they're the core things that make up the idealisms around Etopia. And we've really applied that into a practical way. Now, a second ago, I mentioned about how we combine energy, construction, and intelligent technologies, and we refer to ourselves as an ecotech company. it's not something that has actually been used before. We've coined it ourselves because we realise we don't really fit in a box. We're not prop tech, we're not house builders, so we wanted a way to show exactly what it is that we're doing at Etopia, which is holistically integrating different industries. Energy being, how do homes produce, store and use energy? Construction being, what are the materials that we're actually building out of? What are the performance of these materials? Now, Etopia are using an Offsite hypersip panelized system, which is great for, speed of construction. It's up to double passive house standard. So yeah, it's an incredible material that is really the basis of everything that we do. And then we have the intelligent technologies, which is actually how the home operates, manages and uses its energy long after we've gone and we've got people in occupation. So we have innovated and developed our own IoT device that can work with our renewable energy packages, so our air source heat pumps, our solar, our batteries, to help intuitively monitor and manage the energy within the home to reduce the energy pool there as well, which is quite a unique thing. Often developers will, use products that are already available on the market. Perhaps they're not even thinking about this at this time. So we've really, taken that approach of, we understand the mentality of how our buildings work and we understand what our intelligent technologies need to do to get the best out of them. Yeah, there's some great statistics on what our builds are like as Etopia. So our current EPC average at the moment is 105 out of 100, which is incredible. Most of the homes tested are the ones in our site in Corby, which is our pilot scheme. And it's really where we've managed to drive a lot of these incredible statistics that you may or may not have seen in the news. We have a very net zero ethos. We're working towards, how we, one, describe and define net zero, and two, actually what that means in the industry. We've realised, there's a whole load of definitions of net zero. There's a whole load of, interpretations and, are we basing it on EPCs? Are we basing it on the emissions of the property? Are we looking at embodied carbon? And we're really working through that at the moment. But we are really pleased to say that we are a carbon neutral business in terms of operations. So the business itself is net zero. Our homes generate more energy than they use. So if, for instance, if you look on the EPC, the carbon emissions are in the negative. I think our average is minus 0.525 tonnes of carbon per annum. So we're really pushing the boundaries on what's actually achievable. So when we actually look at that carbon emissions, within the EPC, and we apply it to, real world problems or real world scenarios, over a 25-year mortgage life, our homes have the ability to have a positive impact of 163 tonnes, because the average home in the UK emits about 150 tonnes over a 25-year life. We technically save 13 tonnes, so we get to this 163 tonnes, which is an incredible figure. And when you start applying it into real life cases such as a Boeing 737, how many hours of that of sky time is that? And it works out about 1,861 hours. Or the average car on the road, it works out about taking one of these cars off the road for about 35 and a half years, which is just incredible figures, and we love to shout about them. I've kind of mentioned before our construction material. We use a hypersip panel system, which is where the panels are constructed off site. They're brought to site and they're assembled on site, and these panels have some incredible statistics that go along with them. So for instance, with speed construction, our average 3-bed house, the shell can be constructed within 3 days of on-site time. They can handle winds up to 472 kilometers per hour, which you can acclaim as hurricane proof. They are exceptionally strong with a loading strength of 80 tonnes. They can stack up to 6 floors independently because they are so strong, and they're very diverse and flexible in how you can use the internal space because you don't need so many structural walls. They're fire resistant up to grade A, about 77 minutes, and they're extremely lightweight. So the average panels are about 97 kilograms, which means that you can reduce the requirement of large on-site machinery, so you can access some of these really difficult pocket sites as well. The intelligent technologies, this is where it can get a little bit more complicated, but we have an autonomous shading option with our intelligent technologies. And that's really because, you know, we're looking at how the whole home works and how it breathes and how it takes in energy, how it, you know, uses energy. And one of the key things that we realise is, you know, and I believe this is part of the Future Home Standard too, and in fact I'm sure it is, around auto shading. So for instance, if you had a south-facing garden and, you know, you had a big window onto that garden, there's a high probability that there's going to be a lot of solar gain that comes through that. Now, if you have your air source heat pump and your heating system set to 21 degrees, for instance, and you've got a lot of solar gain coming through the window, your air source heat pump is going to have to work a lot harder to maintain that energy, that temperature level. So what we've actually innovated is an autonomous blind that works with the sensors in your home that we've created, that works with your air source heat pump, that will talk to it and go, you know, there's a lot of solar gain coming through at the moment. Let's lower the blind to prevent the air source heat pump overworking, which really increases the energy efficiency of your home. It has the ability of, you know, about 4 degrees of cooling effect, and also it works when it's colder as well. These big windows can often let in a little cold, so it also has that ability of 3% warming effect as well, which is really unique, and it can really, you know, drive that energy efficiency of your home. We have, you know, things like daylight mimicry in our lights. So for instance, if the blinds do come down, we keep that wellness level maintained. We're also working with Samsung SmartThings. So not only have we got our 5 products, which are sensors, a hub, blinds, wireless light switches and our light bulbs, we also can tap into all of the lifestyle products of Samsung SmartThings, which is, you know, if you have a Bose speaker or an Alexa or something like that, you can start really controlling not just the energy of your home, but also your convenience and your lifestyle for a singular app. So Etopia really operates in a number of different ways, and I'm here to talk to you about one in particular, but just for an overview. We have Etopia Homes, which is our private development arm, which is, you know, you buy the land, you develop, you sell. That's our site in Corby, and that's some of the incredible statistics. That's where some of the incredible statistics have come from. We have Etopia Custom, which is like our grand designs side of the business. We always joke and say it's the Formula One team of Mercedes. They're the really exciting, diverse, versatile products. And what's really great about this is we can show how diverse our product can be. It's not off the shelf, or it doesn't need to be. It can be for optimization, but it doesn't need to be. It can look however you want it to, internally, externally. And these guys really are great at driving that message. And then we have Powered by Etopia. Now, Powered by Etopia is a really unique model. Where essentially as Etopia we realise that we've created through our partnerships with you know, the likes of Samsung for SmartThings, but also through our air source heat pump partnership that we have with them, so they supply all of our air source heat pumps, which creates a really strong supply chain for us. You know, through the products that we've innovated and the you know, the construction material that we utilise, that bringing these all together, we've essentially created a really incredible high performing box, and one that already meets the needs of the Future Home Standard. And we want to offer that out. We're not in the game of, you know, we've got the best product, let's see how far we can get. We really want to work with other people, because we realise that working in silos isn't going to work to achieve our goals. So we're here to, you know, work with other people, to talk to other people, to integrate into their existing frameworks as a supplier of our construction materials, of our renewable MEP packages and our IoT devices as well. So that we can help take traditional builders, this is so exciting, we can help take traditional builders and bring them along on their net zero journey too. And I know, for instance, like the Future Home Standard, it's not really till 2023 that we're going to start feeling a whole load of the effects, but we might as well start building to those requirements today. This phasing effect is incredible, but ultimately why phase when you can do it from the get-go? And that's what we're really here to work with people to do. So as I say, we help companies and housing associations deliver net zero ready homes that are truly future-proof. We do this through supplying our groundbreaking core system to the open market, offering complete flexibility within our framework of services. So essentially we have 3 ways that people can work with us with Powered by Etopia. The first way is, we have a book of off-the-shelf 16 typologies that we've maximised and optimised with spacing standards and things like that to be as energy efficient as possible. We have converted or customised for net zero, which is where we can take anybody's designs and we can work with them to plug in our system so that, if they've already got planning on site, if they've already got their site mapped out and the development ready to go, we can literally plug into their supply chain already. Or the third option is that we can work with you to create designs that are bespoke for you, your clientele, using our system to make it optimized as well for your clients. And some of the key things that really are great about what we do at Etopia is, we've got capacity and scalability. We have our own manufacturing facilities in the UK where we can create this. We have the ability to set up micro facilities if needed for minimum capex. Obviously, I've discussed, the benefits of the ease and speed of delivery. And because we're not actually building these units in a manufacturing facility and shipping them to site, we have a much bigger shipping capacity. It's a lot denser, so you can imagine we just stack the panels on the back of a flatbed truck in a container and off they go to site, rather than these big fully created units that need a lot of machinery and a lot of hard work to actually get to site. So that's another one of our key benefits with the system that we have. And what we've actually found is that with for instance, if you were to bring a unit to us that you wanted, or a development site that you wanted us to help you on your net zero journey with, that for very similar cost to traditional, we can replace with our construction materials, replace with our MEP packages, which in turn, or what we're describing as net zero ready. And essentially what that means is, you've got the right energy renewables in your home, you've got the right construction materials that is high performing, that is, passive house, that is, all of these different things that actually in the next couple of years, you can actually phase that delivery, and you say, oh, I don't want solar today, but I might want it in a few years' time, and that is where the additional cost may come in. It's the solar and the battery, and it's it's a few grand a house, and depending on what your needs are, but that's why we call it net zero ready, because we've got the core baseline ready for when they push and people go, right, everything net zero. All we have to do is stick some solar on the roof and stick a battery in should you want a battery. So it really allows people to stage it. It's not a huge capex expenditure. I know a lot of people are always like, oh, it's really expensive to build this way, but we have to. We're on this road, but we don't have to do it all at once. So for instance, we're working with a client at the moment. We're providing our construction material, we're providing the MEP packages, and we're providing a baseline IoT device service, which is really, the one that can really help monitor and manage the air source heat pump, which is the sensors in the hub. And we have that option for solar for clients coming in. So for instance, if we're working with an SME developer, they can offer solar and battery as an optional extra to their clients, which is a really nice way to start introducing this into the industry without scaring people off. I was doing a panel yesterday, and they literally said to me, they were like, is a healthy building and sustainable building expensive? And it all depends on how you approach it, what finance is available, but two, where your value proposition is. Like, are we just valuing the bottom line at the moment, or are we looking at the wider picture of where we're trying to go? So Etopia can really help people along their journey. I've mentioned a few times why this is really, really important. So, the Future Home Standard has set a 31% goal to lower operational carbon. They want more passive construction materials. So they're essentially saying, no, we don't want just loads of solar on the roof. Please be looking at what you're constructing out of. They've also got this phased approach to reducing carbon, where they want all homes from June 2023 to have to meet these standards. And they're allowing a phased approach, but it's on a unit basis, which at Etopia, we just think, if you're going to build a site, let's just go for it. The materials are here, we're here to support, let's just go for it. And also they're promoting the use of air source heat pumps, which is our primary source of heating. There's also other things that are coming through as well, like housing associations have to commit to 25% of their pipeline being MMC to qualify for funding from Homes England. We're an MMC product, so we're seeing a lot of need in that sense. And also, when we're looking at the ESG investment pool, there's a lot more focus on sustainability for financing and investment. They're looking, how can we take this money that's, in these unsustainable industries and push it into the more sustainable industries. And if you can create a product like we have at Etopia, and if accreditation schemes can create a framework that can tie into ESG investment, there's no reason why a product like this can't be certified for ESG investment. And we're actually seeing it across a lot of what Etopia is doing. We're working with, like global accreditation programs that look at this kind of investment to see how we can create a green commodity out of what Etopia is doing. We're launching in the USA at the moment, we're launching in the Middle East, and we're taking the same system, the same core products, and slightly modifying them for the market, and taking it global with a globalized accreditation approach, because essentially everybody just lives in boxes, don't they? And what you put on the side of them, what you put on the inside of them, what you put on the roof in terms of chimneys, even if it's a fake one, like whatever it is, it's all just boxes. So we're working on how we get this incredible performance box out to the market. We really believe in collaboration as a company. We want to work with partners. We see the value in that. For instance, one of the key things with and key roadblocks to sustainability is consumer behaviour. And who understands a lot more about consumer behaviour than most of the people in the built environment? Samsung. Why? Because they create technology that people use on a daily basis. So why don't we partner with a company like that who do understand consumers to really maximise how we're actually going to deliver our sustainability message? And why do we have to pave a space for us when we can bring other people on the journey, so we're not having to relay that road? And personally I'm a big supporter of this as well. I believe that for too long the real estate industry has been relying too much on just real estate professionals to solve the problem of the communities that we live in, the places that we work. Everybody does something within a community, a building and things like that, and the real estate industry has really had the pressure to deliver that, and I believe it's everybody's responsibility. I believe it's obviously policymakers, I believe it's people in technology, as I say, it's all down to people that are installing this, engineers. Are they understanding what's going on right now? Are we working with those? So Etopia's really taking this holistic view of bringing people on the journey so that we can really maximise what are the core ways that people live, and how do we revolutionise that, or how do we at least disrupt that and change that, so that we actually have a product that's suitable for requirements. So partnerships are a huge thing in what we do. We work with the likes of UK BCSD, the BRE. We're part of the Climate Neutral Now initiative of the UN, just looking at how we can align ourselves better with a lot of these initiatives to drive tangible change. And for instance, the Etopia are solving currently we have a solution for 9 of the SDGs of the United Nations, and our goal will always be to try and get to all 17 of those, because this globalised approach to sustainability is so needed. So that's a little bit about us, and how we are disrupting and tackling the built environment that has for so long been quite a stagnant industry in the way that they think, in the way that they perform, and looking at how we can unite voices, and how we can bring people together from different industries on a singular mission. One of the key things that we're struggling with at the moment is, what is that singular mission? As I mentioned before, there's so many definitions about what all these different things mean, and I think we need to have a bit clearer view on what that target is that we're trying to meet, so that we can bring people together and everybody to take responsibility of their part in the in the supply chain and the value proposition. You know, it's not just designers, it's not just architects, it's not just people like us with a product, it's not just consumers. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody is responsible for doing the most that they can for sustainability within their realm. We need a more collaborative approach. It's not, you know, the engineers designs, architects design something, give it to the engineer, make this work. It's like, actually, let's have a conversation about how we can make this more sustainable. So I think we really are on that journey now of, you know, collaboration and communication and education that we all really need to come together for. And I think that's me for time. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Many thanks to Rosanna for her presentation. The need for all parts of the design process to intersect smoothly and efficiently is a theme we've covered in our webinars before. As material manufacturers, we're in a somewhat unique position of having to interact and manage relationships across the entire industry, from regulators and certification bodies right through to installers and end users. While managing these relationships has always been important, throughout lockdowns and restrictions it's been more important than ever to ensure things happen as they're supposed to and remedial action is minimised. A key element of managing this process effectively is the Principle of Design for Manufacturing and Assembly, or DFMA. Moving forward, developing a more resilient supply chain whilst meeting the increasing demands for higher quality housing makes the adoption of these strategies more important than ever. As manufacturers, we are very well positioned to help develop these principles by supporting key stakeholders in each phase. So how can we make all this happen? The key behind designing for manufacturing and assembly is simplicity and minimising the potential failure points. This can be applied equally to processes conducted both on and off-site. Firstly, minimising the amount of components and systems used in a design. This simplifies not only the assembly process and the training required for installers, but also reduces complexity in the supply chains. Following on from this is ease of fabrication, where simple steps like replacing mechanical fixings with adhesive bonding where appropriate can speed up and streamline some processes. Careful consideration of how installation tasks are divided between on and off-site is also important here. For example, modifying a design to shift weather-dependent or repetitive processes onto an off-site indoor assembly line can reduce weather-related delays and lost working time. This can be extended to consider the required tolerance of a process, and again, these processes can be shifted off-site if possible, to facilitate an easier fitting process with less scope for poorly fitting components, which may cause delays. The composition of the component parts can also be adjusted if needed, such as reducing the need to fit flexible components like gaskets and seals on site, where there is a greater scope for adverse conditions to affect installation. Taken together, these considerations should reduce the need to make ad hoc adjustments on site, where even intended tweak to configuration could cause unforeseen issues. With current requirements to socially distance on site and restricted availability of both people and materials, designing out unforeseen changes as soon as possible is more important than ever. Moving forward, this approach may not be as necessary simply to get things done, but the advantages of a tightly integrated design and construction process as regards on-time and on-budget delivery are clear. Reducing the scope for error and enabling closer manufacturing tolerances also plays an important role in moving towards net zero by closing the gap between the digital design predictions and method statements and the final physical processes. Tighter tolerances and improvements in the reliability of the fabric envelope performance also ensure HVAC system efficiency can be optimised. The most evolved form of construction based on these principles are volumetric systems. This is where mostly complete pods are manufactured off-site. These are then shipped to site and assembled into the final building configuration. These pods are constructed in a factory environment from repeating identical components. From the studs and runners used to assemble panels to the walls, ceiling and floor assemblies created from these panels, the number of unique parts required to create these is minimalised. Our wrap-tight self-adhesive air barrier membrane complements this type of system very well, as it can be integrated into the design in almost any location to provide an airtight seal without compromising the movement of moisture vapour. It can be adhered to individual panels which are then sealed at the joints using the functionally identical wrap-tight sealing tape. It can also be used to wrap larger assemblies in a robust airtight layer. By moving this layer to the outside of the structural panel, all building services within each module can then be factory fitted, with the requirement to provide individual airtight seals, and the requirement to fit them on site is more or less eliminated. This robust, fully adhered membrane protects the pods during transportation and is more resistant to damage, which can reduce or eliminate the need to use additional single-use plastics during transportation. The airtight layer also wraps each pod to form an efficient, vapor-permeable bubble, meaning the subsequent assembly of the modules on site can also be simplified. Seals at expansion joints and between modules are made using the same tapes and membranes as those used in the factory, reducing the need to source a variety of different specifications of each component. The reduced air leakage rates can reduce the thickness of insulation panels required, in turn reducing the thickness of components across the entire facade assembly, from mounting brackets to window flashings. The use of site-applied seals such as EPDM can also be reduced. Another type of volumetric approach was taken on the District 10 project in Dundee, Scotland, where steel shipping containers were upcycled into an office development. The steel containers were lined with timber framing and are Spacetherm aerogel insulation used to limit cold bridging. Careful hygrothermal analysis was also undertaken to ensure condensation risks were mitigated with the impermeable steel shells. These container pods were then assembled into the finished structure, with each container pod forming a fully self-contained office aimed at start-up businesses in the city. In both these types of construction, managing the balance of physical properties and hygrothermal effects is key to realising the full potential of these systems, and in turn to maximising progress towards net zero carbon. Gaining the full benefit, however, requires all parties involved to know what effect each step of the process has on the other, and is where we as product manufacturers can play an important role. Of the many shifts and changes the industry has witnessed over the past year, one of the few positive changes is increased adoption of various tools to facilitate online collaboration between all parts of the industry, not just individual design teams. Whilst this has been by necessity, it has undoubtedly made it easier to get everyone involved in a process around the table, to discuss and resolve issues more quickly. The ability of various parties to drop into design discussions and review details at comparatively short notice helps reduce delays. Equally, being able to conduct virtual training with site operatives based on up-to-the-minute design strategies discussed with specification teams on that same day ensures everyone shares an understanding of what is required of them. As a company, we've been conducting online CPDs and toolbox talks with specifiers and contractors since the first lockdown began over a year ago, and going forward we anticipate this becoming an integral part of our workflow. The experience we've gained allows this communication between ourselves and specifiers and installers of our products to happen seamlessly, and by construction industry standards almost instantly. In this example here, by dropping into the design team meetings, we were able to reconfigure the location of the air barrier layer from a traditional internal vapor control layer based system to an external air barrier. This not only simplified the internal fit-out, but allowed the use of a lower design air leakage rate, in turn allowing the thickness of the external insulation layers to be reduced. Because the air barrier is vapor permeable, it was able to be positioned between the internal and external insulation layers without compromising the hygrothermal performance and trapping any moisture. We could then confirm the suitability of this configuration via dynamic moisture assessment of the assembly, showing no risk of condensation occurring, even in this specific case, without the use of a dedicated vapor control layer. After being able to quickly discuss the design stage effect with the architects, we were then able to follow this up with the cladding contractors, confirming that the bracket and support frame dimensions and window flashing specification could be reduced, bringing down the overall wall thickness. In addition, we were also able to advise on upgrading the reveal insulation using our Spacetherm Slentex A2 system, reducing the cold bridging effect around the window reveals and further improving the efficiency of the envelope, offsetting the cost of this upgrade with savings across the entire facade system. Even just considering this one small area, the ability to rapidly discuss and evaluate multiple options brought about a thinner and higher performance thermal envelope, with a reduction in cost. Developing this approach across the entirety of the building design process is going to be a key element in reaching net zero. Going forward is also an approach that we as a company intend to continue to develop, even as life and work returns to normal. So now let's move on to the Q&A session. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 24th lockdown webinar. It's strange to believe that we have been doing these for so long now. I hope you're all enjoying some nice weather wherever you are, and thank you once again for attending. I really enjoyed that presentation, and we'll hear more from Rosanna shortly. As you know, we will try our best to stay and answer all of your questions today. So we will stay as long as it takes. I've had a lot through email, which is fantastic. And I can see many on the YouTube feed, so please keep them coming. If you'd like to request a product sample pack containing materials discussed today, book a meeting with one of our staff, or if you have a question, or if you'd like to touch base with Rosanna, because I've seen that from a couple of people on the chat feed, please you can email us, or you can actually do that through our webinar page. So go to www.proctorgroup.com/webinar. You will receive Personalised CPD Certification from today's webinar at the same link. So while I've got most of the audience, and hopefully you have your diaries in front of you, our next webinar will be in 3 weeks' time. So not 2 weeks as usual, it's in 3 weeks, on Friday the 16th of April at 10 a.m. The topic will be aerogels in building refurbishment. If you have registered for this webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email as usual. For those that have registered before, that have a link to a short survey. We really appreciate you filling these out. I read all the comments, our team reads all the comments, and we do use them to shape future webinars, so please fill it out. It also has a link to a replay, which you can still sign up for the replay now on the webpage as well, so please feel free to circulate that to your colleagues, friends, husbands, wives, whoever may well be interested. It really helps us if you give us a thumbs up on our YouTube video, or please subscribe to our channel. That will also keep you up to date with new videos and content as we post it. So I think that's pretty much everything. I have the panel here who are hopefully all unmuted. So morning, James, how are you today?
I'm very well, Keira. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone.
Good. Good morning, Pam.
Morning, everyone.
Good, and welcome, Rosanna.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning. Thank you so much for your presentation and overview. So I won't reintroduce you, and Pam and James are both fairly familiar faces. James is our technical specification manager for the London area, and Pamela is our senior technical advisor based up in Scotland. So I'm just going to start asking away with the questions because we've had so many coming in. Please bear with me because they come in on a lot of different platforms. If you have any more, you can email webinar@proctorgroup.com, post them on the YouTube feed. You can also DM us on Twitter. So they're coming through now. So I am just going to start. Rosanna, Peter McDonald has asked, how do you manage the balance of meeting environmental goals against using less sustainable materials such as foams and electronics?
For us, I think it's about, taking it one step at a time. So, we are looking at our full supply chain. We do know the embodied carbon of all of our homes and how long it takes, for certain homes to offset that embodied carbon. And we're very conscious that, there are separate elements to that supply chain. You've got to think about the embodied carbon and where that comes from. You've got to think about how they all come together, and then you've got to think about the operational carbon. But it's difficult to tackle them all at once. So what we've really done is we've taken, a material that, yes, it does use a foam, and it does use a polyol within the foam. That is an unsustainable material. We do understand that. However, most of the other materials within the panel can be recycled into other things. So that's one of the ways that we tackle it at the moment. But the other thing is now we are continuing to innovate. So we've not just stopped here and gone, this panel's really, really great. We're now looking at it and going, well, how can we use circular economy? How can we potentially use, recycled sea plastics and break it down into that polyol to make these more sustainable? So it's all about what else you can do. You don't stop growing, you don't stop innovating, you don't stop moving forward. So we're tackling one bit at a time, but always being aware, we've got to look at, all of these different ways that we can invest further to become more sustainable. So it's just get them to that place.
Okay, and just on that train of thought, a number of people have asked, can you please clarify what are the panels made for? And another person has asked, what are the U values of them? So can you talk maybe through the technical element of the panels in a bit more detail?
Yes, I can do. So the panels are made from, they've got a steel surround, a very thin steel surround. We've got two types of panels, because I don't know whether you noticed or realised recently that NHBC or LABC, well, they stopped warranting magnesium oxide board last year, which caused huge issues for us, because as we know, it's one of the most sustainable, high-performing materials, and everyone from BREEAM to, you know, all across the accreditation boards globally, they recognise this as a sustainable material. But, you know, NHBC and LABC have, you know, had put a block on warranting it. So we actually innovated another panel as well that uses cement-based fibre, which, you know, is quite interesting because they're happy to warrant that. But when we're looking at, you know, the drive for sustainability, that's less sustainable than magnesium oxide actually is as a product. So you're almost taking a step back, and the industry's calling for sustainability, but then we have these blockers coming in the way that go, you know, magnesium oxide, oh, is it fit for purpose? It's a more sustainable material, and you're going, I don't really know what you guys want. But just coming back to it, so our core panel, our best panel is magnesium oxide, steel surround, and injected foam, and it's got, you know, all electrical conduits throughout it. And the other panel is you're replacing the magnesium oxide with a cement-based fibre board, essentially. So yeah, that's the makeup of the panel. I'm just actually, I don't want to misquote this. I'm just getting up the U value now, just in case I say something wrong, because yeah, here it is. It's 0.09 to 0.13, the U value of the panel, depending. So it's got incredible performance.
Great. And yeah, there's people asking for DOPs and technical sheets. So we will forward you all this information afterwards, Rosanna. And so if I can just ask anyone that has posted in the YouTube feed for information, please just pop us an email so we don't miss anything as well. That would be fantastic. James, if I can come to you for a question, please.
Yep.
There was one here. Let me just find it. Sorry, it's quite busy. From GKP Tech. I understand the need for tech in the houses of the future, so it just makes sense. But will there be a problem of tech illiteracy?
Yes, I mean, obviously what this sort of alludes to is what Code for Sustainable Homes tried to instigate, what Eco and Green Deal tried to instigate, which is the education of the homeowner after these new and updated products are installed on their property, whether it's the insulation on the outside, whether it's replacing the doors and windows, whether it's updating the boiler system. What it is obviously divulging all the information that the homeowner needs in order to function within their house properly, and in order for their house to function properly even. So with obviously the consultations that have been going on of late, with the future home standards that sort of will be implemented 24-25, what it is to negate the performance gap. So it's addressing the issues of the performance gap. So not only is it putting more ownership, the user guide that's going to be produced is not only going to put more onus onto the architect, but also onto the contractor, onto the developer, so that they stick to specification. They make sure that they're not value engineering in the worst terminology of value engineering by removing products for a cheaper alternative, making sure that they're sticking to those materials. The user guide will integrate thermal imagery. It will integrate photographic evidence of the build during its process, so to sort of reinforce as designed and as built, so that the homeowner can actually see that their building is being constructed in the correct manner. The SAP assessments and the energy consultant will obviously input their information into it, and the BREL will be provided, which is obviously the building regulations, England Part L, will be provided in simplified format to the homeowner as well, along with the enhanced EPCs hopefully as well at the same time. So the idea is that obviously this user guide will be put into place, just like we were having the meeting with digital twinning the other week. It's just piggybacking on the back of that. So there's more and more information being provided to the homeowner in order to make sure that they know exactly how their building can perform. Ultimately, there will be the requirement to simplify that down even more, in order to make sure that, you know, maybe there's an elderly occupant there that needs slightly more explanation as to how they need to function within their property. But that's the aim of it, is obviously to make these houses more and more efficient, to sort of decarbonize them and basically just get them as efficient as humanly possible. But ultimately, they will only be efficient if the people living in them treat them the way they need to be treated.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, James. Pam, let me ask you a couple of questions here at once, if that's okay, because I think they kind of link in. First of all, if you have any general comments, there's a couple of questions around, you know, what about retrofit? You know, so Eric made a great point. 80% of 2050 homes are already standing. So actually answer that first, then I'll come on to the other two, so I won't confuse you. Let's go with that. If you have any comments to pass on it.
Easily done. I get confused very easily. Yeah, I mean, it's very true. We've got a huge existing housing stock, and the solution for that is not to knock them all down and build again. It might be for some that have legitimately reached the end of their life, or were poorly built in the first place. But, you know, there's so many buildings out there, both historical, heritage, fine examples of their time. We've got to look at ways of bringing them up to standard. So there are things that you can do. You know, we've covered them in quite a number of webinars in the past. So there's quite a lot of content on our YouTube page and our website that, you know, anybody that wanted to go into any more depth can do that. But really, it's about doing what you can to the building without damaging the fabric. So we're custodians of the buildings. You know, we have a duty to keep them going for as long as possible. So things like, you know, draft proofing, I harp on about draft proofing. I harp on about using things like blinds, secondary double glazing. These are quick gains. Things like increasing your insulation, not forgetting things like window reveals, etc. So there's lots of ways that it can be done. And, you know, if you really wanted to, you could go even down as far as the route of doing a really deep retrofit where everything gets stripped out, and then you can put in your very high levels of air tightness, your high insulation, your different heat pumps and different heating systems and ventilation strategies as well. It's really about deciding to what extent you want and what will work for your building. And people like the Passive House, you know, with their InnerFit system, you know, is a really good way if you want to go to that deep retrofit methodology.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, we all know a lot about draft proofing working in the Proctor office, which is an 1800s Victorian building that's been in the family for many, many years. If you've not been, you're welcome to visit anyone. And coming on to the other questions, Pam, there's sort of a general comment from Dave McGrath. You know, there's a fundamental error in passive solar gain will reduce the demands on the ASHP unless it's working as an air conditioner, which is not acceptable under RHI. So I don't know if you want to pass on that, but at the same time, there was also sort of a question about overheating in new buildings. So Michelle had asked, you know, what about issues of overheating in new buildings where you have a very efficient fabric? So can you kind of link those two in?
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, I sort of agree with you, Keira, living in a Victorian house myself. You know, it's you're used to drafts. So when you go into a well-insulated building, that can actually feel quite hot to those of us that are used to putting jumpers and thick socks and everything on to just sit and watch the telly. But so yeah, I mean, there is a definite issue with overheating. There's a definite shift with climate change to warmer temperatures, especially in inner cities. So we are seeing increasing temperatures every year, some areas even worse than ourselves. In theory, the same insulating values that stop us losing heat from inside should help us stop gaining heat from outside. But you know, we don't like living in closed boxes with small windows. We want to maximize our natural light. We want to minimize, you know, use of light bulbs and lighting and things like that. We want to look at views outside. We don't want to feel like we're closed in. We've gone beyond that. But if you've not orientated your building right, so if you've got a south facing or an area where you've got a lot of solar gain, that can make the building quite hot. I mean, you know, Rosanna mentioned it, that they've got their shading system that comes in. Passive House and other net carbon zero and low carbon designs can do very clever things with the soleil, you know, shading, shutters going in, automatic systems like the Etopia one. And then, you know, you're just looking at the positioning of it, the orientation, so you can maximize that heat if you want it, but potentially nighttime purging to get rid of some of the heat as well. So there are different ways of doing it, which means that, sort of tipping over into what Dave was saying, that, you know, you're not necessarily going to have to rely on your heat, your air source heat pumps to provide that cooling capacity. That there are other ways to naturally cool the building, but it's got to be done at design stage. It's got to be taken into account right at the very start.
Okay, thank you very much, Pam. Rosanna, if I can come back to you, you're quite popular on YouTube with a few people directing questions at your project Etopia. Is this something you can help with in terms of someone wants to talk to someone about community and the powered by elements? Is that something that they could touch base with you on?
Yeah, definitely. If you've got any questions around any area of the business, because I work throughout all of it, just send them through to my LinkedIn or my email address, Rosanna Lawn at projectetopia.com, and I'll just direct you to the right person. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect. Briar has asked, what were the challenges you've had to overcome for contractors effectively to work with the product in the harsh environment in the Middle East, such as the heat, dust storms, etc.?
TBC on that one, because we're still launching in the Middle East, and one of the things that we are actually doing, because you know, it can be quite challenging for quite a small innovative company from the UK to go global. So we appreciate that, you know, every single country has a different approach, has different challenges, has different needs, has different consumers. So we're really working on how do we actually deliver that on the ground. So for instance, in the US, it is an Etopia owned, ran a business, and it's an extension of the Etopia business. Whereas in the Middle East, it's going to be very likely, or it is likely, that we've partnered with a contractor and a construction company on the ground who will utilize our product within their system. So it's going to be very similar to a powered by Etopia model, but in the Middle East with a partner. So they're TBC, but if you do have any questions in the next 6 months and want to know how we're getting on, then please let me know, and I will come back to you.
Great, thank you. Another one here surrounding the blinds from Designworks. So they've commented, wouldn't the smart interactive blinds be better within the interpane cavity? Otherwise, the heat absorbed by the blind is in the building and is radiated into the room. So again, that's quite a technical question. Maybe you want to go back to him on, or is there anything you want to comment on with that?
I think the thing that I really want to comment on, so what we provide is the blind motor. So if you have a already existing roller blind, you can just kind of stick it on the end of your be able to intuitively manage that. We wanted to produce a product that wasn't just, you know, available for new builds. We wanted anybody off the street to be able to buy this smart home system and to be able to just retrofit it in their home, you know, in 20 minutes. So everything that we've done has been with simplicity and the consumer at the forefront, because what we don't want to do is, you know, as James was alluding to, make it too complicated, make it too difficult to replace, too difficult to do this, too difficult to do that, because then people just will not use the product. You've got to imagine we're talking to housing associations, how this product might be able to help their clients and things like that, and they just do not want the headache. Our blind motor stopped working. Okay, let me pull out half your wall and see what's going on. So it's about, you know, making it as simple and as accessible as we can to the market, and as simple to use, and yeah, there's probably ways that we could have integrated it to make it to increase the performance of it, but I think that would have decreased the usability of it, which would have presented its own difficulties and its own problems along the road.
Okay, thank you very much, Rosanna. I'm just going back up the chain because I've seemed to have skipped over a few, so bear with me a second. Pam, if I can ask you this one, please. Do you see MMC and offsite construction as another fad, or will it be embraced by industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there has been a lot of negativity and negative connotations spanning back with a lot of offsite and MMC type methodology. I mean, there was a lot of quickly installed prefabricated houses that went up post-war, and I'm sure quite a few of us remember the cold classrooms that were sort of put into our school playgrounds as school class sizes has grew, and suddenly, something that was designed for 10 years has been there 40, 50 years. In the case of ones near me, they're still being used, sort of like 40 years after I left school. So it's, these things, although they were designed for a short time, they were actually fabricated quite well because they had that offsite element to them, and they have lasted, albeit maybe a bit tired now. So I think there, and it kind of leads to some of the questions that are coming in, there's that sort of negativity over the uniformity of it, over that it's all these boxes that are just, put in and they're all the same outside, they're all the same roof, they're all the same orientation. But I think nowadays we've got so many innovative companies out there that can look at different types of cladding, render systems, roof finishes, etc., that actually there's the flexibility there to design more than just a pod to be slotted in, and give a degree of design autonomy to other people, and allow them to do it. But I mean, the real benefit to MMC and offsite modular work is, as I sort of alluded to, it's taking that process away from site conditions. So you've got no influence from the weather, from cold rain, muddy fields. You're in a controlled environment where moisture contents, that everything's going to go together optimally because you can control those conditions. That it's designed to go together. It's not going to be sort of, pardon the French, bodged on site. It's you're not getting it to site and going, wait a minute, that's not working, because it's been so cleverly and well designed on paper before it's even gone to fabrication. Does mean that you have to sort of freeze your design quite early on, but it's certainly possible. It allows bulk buying, so it allows cost savings to the manufacturers of them, because they're using components across all their systems. So it's not like this, we've got to look at something for this, or we've got to look at something for that. So it also makes designing bespoke connections, etc., feasible, because you're using that same connection across all of your panels and your systems. So it's that cohesion and everything like that. So I think we need to start moving the times. I think we need to shake off our old negativity towards prefabricated and offsite manufacture. Our building physics knowledge has moved on exponentially. We know how these things work. We know how these connections work. We know the problems. We've learned from them. I apologise for the Star Trek pun here, but I am a bit of a geek. It's prefab, Jim, but not as we know it. It's not what we know now, what we know from the past. It's new, it's innovative, it's exciting, and it's definitely a way forward to tackle the housing crisis that we find ourselves in now.
Good, thank you, Pam. Well, just on, you were chatting during there, Mike Stripling had also commented, is it just another twist on building the same boxes in a different way? What about design character and future national personality and heritage? So I understand, the concept around these looking the same, but I mean, Rosanna, do you have anything else to add on that in terms of the aesthetics of these buildings and how it might contribute to, how it looks in the environment, not just the energy performance of the actual modules?
Yeah, definitely. I think I alluded to it in my presentation as well. We actually have a custom self-build company that uses these products, that uses our panelised system and timber frame as well, to do bespoke designs for clients. And what that really shows is the versatility to people that are speaking to us, because there is that, that stigma in the industry. They're all going to look the same. What about this? What about that? But honestly, like, for instance, with our panels, you can clad it in anything you want. It can look however you want, and internally it can look however you want. So you can build one of these homes and you can put it in a vernacular with older homes, and you can get the same brick slip as the homes in that vernacular, and it looks the same. So I think it's just a case of understanding that people have seen that some of the issues is around versatility, and people are responding to that. And there's so many different clads and so many different anything that you can now get to personalize these, or to create them to fit whatever the local vernacular is. For instance, we've got we've created 5 house design types, just in case people don't want to. And one of them's like, really old terrace brick. One of them's, a bit more urban. One of them's, a little bit more like this, so that it works with planning regime as well. So people can go, okay, I don't really want to design it. I just want houses that are sustainable. Can I have that design, and the planners want that? Okay, cool. Go and have that. So I think actually that's a huge misconception. And I think if people took the time to really just delve into what the options are, they'll realise that they're pretty endless, actually.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. James, we have a question from, let me just find him here. I had a question somewhere in this YouTube feed and I've gone crazy. Craig, here we go. Is hydrogen the future for home testing?
Right. There's low carbon hydrogen for heating in homes is in its very infant stages at this moment in time. There are very small scale trials being run to potentially show the benefits, but it's seen to be quite far away, especially on a large scale rollout. It's really not there yet. It's obviously part of the decarbonisation, removing the electrical supplies to the houses, removing the gas lines to the houses from a new build perspective. But ultimately, it's a far off venture at this moment in time. But it's just another string to the bow, in all honesty, of how the country's pushing things forwards, and how we want to alter and get to that 75% carbon reduction by 2025.
Thank you, James. Another one in, I will come back to YouTube, but I'm just getting quite a few via email at the same time here, from Josh. Is fees staying?
Yes, it is. What happened with that was there was the initial proposal in the consultation from the MHCLG last year. They proposed to remove fees. But because of the reliance on heat pumps, there was a lot of emails back and forth, obviously saying, look, you can't rely solely on the heat pumps at this moment in time, maybe in the future, but not yet. So the decision was to retain fees. And obviously part of the future home standard for 2024, implemented 2025, they haven't decided the level at which they're going to go into yet. The interim improvements for the notional fabric standards will be, there's two options. There's option one, which is 0.11 watts per square meter Kelvin for your roofing systems, and that's whether it's flat or pitched. Obviously, and then your walls at 0.18, and then your floors at 0.13. Again, these are flexible as they are at this moment in time. You can juxtapose, so to speak, if you've got more room in certain areas, obviously, especially if you're doing a pitched roof, there is generically more room up there in order to insulate at a thicker level, as opposed to if you're doing a flat roof. So you can still move those figures around in order to achieve what you need to. The air passivity rating has been will be reduced down to 5 from 8. Which again, in consideration of our previous EU members over on mainland, we're still not there. They are performing better than us in regards to their air passivity requirements, albeit their build stock is very, very different. The makeup is very different to what we do. I'm not including France in this conversation. My apologies. But the type of builds that they do obviously are predominantly more of the timber frame route, and therefore their air tightness lines are a lot better. Regarding windows, you're looking at 1.2, doors 0.1, and the other side of it is that thermal bridging needs to be taken into consideration now. There are no more accredited details in regards to that. So from our point of view, in regards to manufacturing, we need to be on that as well. So when we carry out our WUFIs, when we carry out our U-value calculations, we need to be a lot more aware of the thermal bridges that are taking place within the build-up, and therefore can advise on that as well. And the SAP assessors will need to be hot on it as well. Option 2 will be a 15% reduction on that target. But obviously the government would like people to go for option 1. To obviously future-proof, and basically, as Roxana keeps saying, is to get going now, so to speak, so that when it comes to legislation in 24, 25, that we're already there or thereabouts. And there also is the fabric minimum fabric standards, and that will stay as per 2019.
Okay, great. Really showing your technical knowledge there, James. Thank you very much. You were finished, were you? Sorry, I didn't.
Nearly a little.
Sorry. Go ahead. Please finish. Please finish.
It was just in regards to the decisions that we completed in December this year and implemented in June 22. So that's when they'll come into place. Obviously, a month ago, the overheating consultation came out, and that's there's. Obviously, we've been talking about blinds and shutters and shading and percentage of glazing on a property. There's the question, is that percentage on one wall or is it the whole property? It is the whole property. There is obviously the south facing. You can't have more glazing on the south facing than you do on the north facing because of that issue. There is the proposal to not accept shutters and blinds, which will probably be more on the manual than the automated side of things, because people can not shut them or people can do whatever they want with them. They're even looking at sort of removing the ability of utilising trees for shading, because obviously people can cut them down. So they're trying to reduce or remove the abilities of the options, basically, to make it a lot more standard that people just sort of stick to it. But we'll see what the consultation comes back with all the remarks that people are making.
Okay, great. Thank you, James. There's still more interesting questions coming through, but I'm going to jump to one for Rosanna that I received by email, which I do want to cover. Jenny said, you touched on low startup costs and local manufacturing. Does this technology have applications in, for example, third world development or emergency disaster relief?
Yes, actually. Sorry, I'm in awe of all of your knowledge, James. I was just sat there laughing it all up. I was like, I should be writing a list here of everything that I need to know. So thank you for that. Yes, it does. We've actually built in Namibia. We built a shanty replacement pilot in a shanty town in Katatura in Namibia in 2019. And now the reason we did that is because we wanted to prove that, that the system works all over the world, that you can create energy efficient homes all over the world. I think it costs us about £25,000 in materials, not in shipping and and labour and things like that, but £25,000 in materials to build a 2-bedroom flat. We trained 6 locals from the shanty town to build it, and they managed to put the shell up, the core panel system up within 3 hours, and they couldn't read or write in English. So it's a very simple system to use, which is why we love it so much, because you can just slot the panels together on site. So yeah, it does have application. It's something that we've explored. It's actually something that has generated a lot of interest overseas in different countries. So for instance, the US are now going, okay, so if you've done that as a shanty replacement pilot and it's energy efficient and we're tracking all of the energy usage via smart tech here, can you start looking at our affordable housing issue in the US? Can these shanty replacement units that you've created, will they be useful within the affordable housing industry within the US and things like that? So it's actually catapulted us into much bigger things. But our CEO is really, really interested in trying to provide quality life for people in poverty. He was homeless himself many times when he was younger. He suffered at the hands of the social housing issue within the UK. So one of his key things is let's make this quality affordable. So he will be returning to Africa, I have no doubt, when we've endeavoured across the US and we've managed to get the UK to where it is in the Middle East. His goal is to return to Africa and really make some huge tangible change to some of the most deprived communities with this system.
That's great. Well, I'd love to see the information on that if you can send it across. That's really interesting.
We have a mini documentary, so I can send that across if anyone wants to see what we did and how we did it, and how we got the panels there and things like that.
Oh, love to circulate that in our business, and we could send it to our customers as well. Yeah, fantastic. Another one for you, Rosanna, from Paul, and I'll come back to the others, so please bear with me if you're waiting on something being answered. If you were to guarantee that you met the new Association of Energy Conscious Builders, AECB standard, overheating would be no issue as they cover that, would you be able to do so? Is that something you can answer today?
That's not something that I would personally feel comfortable to answer, but I could speak to some of our technical directors and have a chat with them and come back to you on that for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, Paul, that's great. If you could email us with that, or if we have your email address, we'll touch base with you. And don't worry, Rosanna, we do that quite frequently. You know, if we don't have the exact answer, we're the same. We'd rather not answer, so that's great. Pam, okay. So many questions. Great. Can traditional build keep evolving to keep up pace with new pressures from climate change, carbon reductions, etc.? And sorry, Pam, while you're on that, if you can also comment on some of the information that Andy Gibson sent through about where the industry is going. Have you read that on the YouTube feed? There's 4 about where the industry is going in terms of, 2 directions around MMC, insulants, and then the question of fire. And James, you're obviously very knowledgeable in fire, so we can come on for you to comment on that as well. But does that make sense, Pam? So that kind of the question there via email and the one in the feed.
Start with the evolution of traditional. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very true. Can traditional building methodologies actually involve? I mean, there's a lot of signs that it's not. Sort of 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago, we're still using methods of cavity wall, solid wall construction, concrete. I mean, heavens, the Pantheon in Rome was built using concrete, and we're still to find something that can take over from that. It's still a fantastic building material. So it's not to say that traditional build can't be used. I think the biggest problem there with a lot of traditional build is that they can be quite energy heavy, and trades heavy. So you've got a lot of people in there trying to fight over tradesmen. Therefore, things are possibly being thrown up quickly and maybe not the same due diligence as we need to start looking at. So things like mortar joints being forgotten, not sealing. So we've got issues there with uncontrolled heat loss. There's only so much building and depth that you can get before you start getting issues with structural connections. And suddenly your ties or your cantilevers or your structural fixings to bring out something is suddenly gone from something that's manageable to something that's a huge coal bridge and a real issue. So it actually it's counterintuitive. It works against itself. We're also touched on earlier about the climate. We're getting scenarios now where that 1 in 100 year storm or weather event is happening much more readily. It's coming down to sort of 1 in 50, 1 in 20, 1 in 10, sometimes yearly. We're seeing more flooding, heavy rains, drier periods. Can we honestly say that our current housing stock is coping with it, or our current methodologies, methods are building with it? And also, as we also touched on earlier, that this need for new builds, this need for more housing, this need for improving a lot of our existing housing stock for the health of our population, is traditional building actually going to do that? Tipping now into the timber frame side of it, from Andy, timber frame's always been quite good because you can get buildings up quite quickly because, again, those panels can be manufactured off-site. MMC panels, closed panels like Rosanna does, they're great because they can be designed to do what you want to do. You've obviously taken boards that are considered non-combustible and using the benefit of those boards to sandwich a more combustible core. But that core that's considered combustible can be actually sealed off by, from what you're saying, that's sort of like, it's almost like a sealed panel. I'm getting the feeling from it. So it's looking at how you can build utilising efficient materials, but also to move forward. So we have things like, and we've been doing work with the STA, the Structural Timber Association, on how we can use our fire shield with traditional OSB in a closed panel. So we've got this manufactured offsite closed panel coming from the timber frame manufacturers being put on site to give you like a category B or a category C separating distance for during construction. So we're looking at how we can improve and protect that structure during the design phase before you get your brick or block outside to protect it. Things like off-site manufacture means that you can take more care and make sure that sealants and joints through like pipe penetrations, etc., are properly fire stopped as well, rather than going, oh, it's Friday afternoon, it's pouring with rain, I want home, and I was going to say go to the pub, but that's not happening at the moment.
Not today.
Not today. But I'm walking home to get my feet up and watch the football or whatever, and that'll be fine. So we have a lot more control by doing offsite stuff. So there's a real benefit. And I think with some clever designing, with innovative materials, looking at systems, we can do it. The problem is it's trying to prove those systems, and maybe we need to address some of the testing methodology and look at ways of actually doing more robust fire testing, etc., and getting ahead of the game and just getting a better handle on it, rather than just relying on what we have at the moment. It's quite an exciting time in fire development and fire design. It's evolving quickly.
Yeah. Just on the traditional build as well, I guess the whole challenge that the UK faces with the skills shortage as well. And especially with Brexit, in terms of labour and materials, that's another challenge that we're overcoming it. And to be fair, we deal with all types of different construction as a business, so traditional, offsite, etc. But I do hear an awful lot about that becoming more problematic, of course.
It's really exciting what Rosanna was saying about the panels going over, and 3 unskilled people in Africa were able to put them together, and that's the sort of thing that we should be aiming towards, is systems that, and I shouldn't say unskilled because everybody's skilled, but people with maybe not the same level of skill that is needed to put 2 bricks together can put up buildings. It creates jobs, it helps buffer the economy, and it helps take these panels and these systems and these methods of construction to people who maybe wouldn't be able to afford or deal with a more traditional method.
Yeah. So we'll come on to fire. I just want to mention, Alan Crawford's made a lot of great comments, commenting on different systems that are used, has mentioned about the cost difference between, traditional perhaps being more competitive than offsite, at times. So just to say thanks for the comments, Alan. I can't spot an actual question other than comment on, how do we combine the aspirations of building better, beautiful commission with water basic panelised flat panels? Is just changing the cladding enough? So I wondered if anyone on the panel had a comment based on that. We kind of covered it a little bit in aesthetics earlier, just if there's anything additional.
I think it depends on what you want from your building. Some people quite like the aesthetics of quite a clean, linear type build. Other people want more of the vernacular, And I think what Rosanna said earlier on was that with their system, you can have that. You've got the flexibility of build. I mean, I suppose the difficulty comes where you want a curve in your wall or something like that. But I think it's not. I don't think we can ever replace traditional build or individual, for want of the better word, grand design type. Once in a lifetime houses. There's still a place for that. They're still going to be needed. They're still going to be wanted. But for a lot of the sort of the general housing stock, a lot of these panelised systems are definitely providing us with enough flexibility, and I think I see some fantastic images on LinkedIn, of different styles, and it's quite amazing sometimes when you consider what's actually being constructed underneath it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. So we can come on to Andy's great comments and surrounding how the industry is going. So he's asked how the panel feels generally about how the industry is moving. In one sense, we're trying to push ourselves towards low carbon, high energy materials, and on the other hand, we have this whole very critical element of fire and making sure that these materials that are used are well fit for purpose and suitable. So something certainly in Proctor Group we are very, very conscious of and very robust in how we go about marketing and providing and manufacturing and making these products which are fit for purpose within these certainly high-rise constructions and other buildings we're supplying. But do we have any, his question, I guess, his worry is that fears over fire safety will stop specifiers moving towards these low-carbon fabric technologies. How do we see this playing out in legislation? I think, James, that's something you know a lot about. Is that something you can comment on?
Yeah, it's obviously, as Pam said, it's about system providing. It's about testing. And obviously the government will always be open to new systems to be provided, but ultimately that they need to be tested as well under the standards, whether it's under BSEN 13501, whether it's under BS 8414. These systems will need to be tested. Obviously, with the developments in materials, with the ownership, with the onus put onto because of the unfortunate events, the materials are now under pressure. The manufacturers are now under pressure to provide materials from an A1, from an A2. Obviously, there's the amendments in regards to Regulation 7, which sort of nullifies certain products. Obviously, from our point of view, the breather membrane has to achieve a Class BS3 D0 as opposed to an A1, A2, because it's recognised the fact that there isn't that ability yet for the product to be an A1, A2, but still perform the same function that it does. So it needs to conform to BS 5250. So there's a lot more involved in regards to the functionality of these products, as opposed to just being A1 or A2 rated. What you'll find a lot of at the moment is the fact that manufacturers are jumping onto this A1, A2, and then sort of getting the test data and materials in on the sly, so to speak. And some of them, they're not telling the truth, to be honest. So whenever you're specifying, look into the ancillary products, look into the testing of the product to make sure that the material that it's going on to, it's been tested with that material as a single point. There's a lot of people making a lot of money out of A1 and A2 stating, but from the high-rise perspective in regards to fire, a lot of companies now are making off-site panels, which will be then lowered into site by crane, which obviously reduces down the amount of materials, reduces down the travel to site, so on and so forth. So from a high-rise perspective, we've got quite a few main contractors now that are creating these off-site panels and obviously achieving the fire regulations, but also reducing down their carbon footprint for that build type. So, we've got to evolve. If we don't evolve, then evolve. If we don't evolve, then obviously we'll start to flounder. So, we can still build certain projects out of the traditional materials. I see Mike obviously saying, why are we still using brick and block? Hello, Mike. I hope you're well. It's because that's what people are used to doing in this country. We're British. That's what we do. Or Scottish or whatever, wherever we're going from.
Thank you, James.
But, it's also down to economics. It's down to cost of these materials. And obviously where you get more and more into the lower carbon, people start, when you're talking about heat pumps and solar panels and ground source heat pumps, so on and so forth, the sort of people's alarm bells go off in regards to money. So they go back to what they need to, what they know how to price, which is brick and block. So it's getting people out of that mindset, getting them to understand exactly what it's all about. Juxtaposing the speed of build versus the initial outlay of the price. So it's an education process. And this is obviously what we're here for today, is just to try and get as much information over to people to engage, to start a conversation. But ultimately, Andy, if there's any, if there's a sort of sit down meeting you want to have, then we can sort of see what you're doing and potentially assist from there.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, good question. And then I've got a few more via email which have been directed at Rosanna as well. So I'll come back to you, Rosanna. Give me 1 second. But Pam, quickly, JKP Tech has said, if I was to invent or discover a new material or panel today, well, if you do, please come to us. We can have a look at that for you if it's an interesting one. But how long would it take for it to get onto a building? So in terms of, obviously not making it, but how long in terms of the process of, due diligence, or even if you just say for Proctor Group, how long it takes us to be fair, due diligence, certification, warranties, etc.
A lot depends on the level of change or the level of innovation. So if you've got something that falls in nicely with existing regulations or European standards, British standards, etc., it can be relatively easy to carry out the testing. Some testings, aging testing, etc., can take quite a while to do. So, I mean, you could be looking anywhere up from 3, 6, 9, 12 months for that. Once you know that you've got a product there, so we're anything between 3 months if it's something that's quite agile to we can be 2, 3, 4 years in the development phase. The testing, if it's for something that's bespoke, that's never been done before, that can take quite a long time to get in place, sometimes because you're having to develop new methodologies for it. And certification, because a lot of new technologies need certification or want certification, so that can be a challenge. That can be anything upwards of a year to 18 months or more, again, depending on what's needed and who you're working through. And then you've sort of got your warranties, and a lot of these are interrelated. So maybe a warranty provider wouldn't give you a warranty until you got certification. You don't get your certification until you got the testing. So, I mean, really, from us, anything from about 6 to 12 months, if you're not looking at certification, to sort of maybe 18 months to 2 years for a fully certified product, or you're looking at a staged introduction. Some panels that we've worked with providers, I mean, we've been talking to them for 5, 6 years, and we're now seeing them actually go on site. And like all innovation, there's always the point where there could be a stumbling point and you just have to say, this isn't going to work, we're going to have to revisit it. So,
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, be prepared for failure.
Yeah, and have some spare change for testing costs. That's I'm sure we all around the table here we will all know. But that I'm not making fun of that. It's very important that the right products have the right certification, and unfortunately that comes with a price tag. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, some deep pockets there, unfortunately. But if you do have an idea, then we're happy to hear about it. Rosanna, Julie has said, as well as technology, are there any lessons around company culture that traditional construction companies can learn from the likes of Samsung?
We've actually had a really great experience with Samsung because they have a very unique, I want to say, kind of partnership program, where even though it is a large corporate company, it feels almost like that family company, because we have one point of contact who has incredible connections across the business. So what originally started as an appliance and air source heat pump deal suddenly turned into our partnership with Smart Things and our home technology that's now looking at how do we co-develop new technology for the decarbonisation of existing housing stock together. So having that one point person who knew everyone, who was integrated, who was, I suppose in some senses, senior enough to call on the right people, has created this environment where ideas have just grown and grown, and new partnerships have formed in different areas of the business and different territories. What's going on in the US is a slightly different thing that we're doing in the UK. That's slightly different that we're doing in the Middle East, all with Samsung. That's slightly different to what we're doing in our smart home company. That's slightly different to what we're doing in our development company. And it's all through this one person who's actually been, his name's Taz, actually, I'll just put it out there. His name's Taz, he's been incredible. And he's just been able to join the dots for us and give us that, that full experience, that we're not just dealing with a corporate company going, go over there, try to speak to this person, try to speak to this person. It's somebody who's, navigated us through the complexities that is Samsung to create all of these amazing results. And I think when we're looking at collaboration, because I do believe, collaboration is going to be key for the industry to move forward, for people to be working together. I think that's going to have to be one of the key things that we do. How do we actually develop the processes for collaboration to take place, for ideas to, be generated and for that inspiration to happen, to be able to move forward. Anyone who's in a big corporate company, I implore, that giving people that family-run business style attention can really create great things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the US. Another question we had in via email, really great one. How well does integrated smart technology cope with, for example, power failures as seen in Texas this year?
So that's one thing that we are looking at the moment, because all of our system is wireless, in the sense that even the wireless light switch doesn't need a battery. It's really incredible how it sends like this tiny bit of power from the push to the light bulb to generate the light bulb. But it's all based on network Wi-Fi. So for instance, if there is a power cut, your Wi-Fi goes down, everything's going to stop talking to each other. So this is actually something that we are really looking into at the moment. So I think it's a work in progress. I think it's something that's definitely on our radar. But at the moment, it's, you know, trying to innovate and find the ideas around actually how we're going to make that work, because you're right, there are issues that do arrive like that are unfortunate events that we have to prepare for, and we're on that journey at the moment.
Okay, great. And Rosanna, sorry, before I'm giving you lots of questions at once here, but Stuart has said insulated Etopia panels, could they suffer cold bridging through full depth metal stud framing? So are there any risks of local condensation, staining or mold growth with even if you have MVHR? So again, quite an in-depth question. I don't know if you want to take it afterwards or if that's something you want to comment on now.
I'm going to take that question afterwards, and the reason for that is because I know that this was an issue that came up when we first started using the panels, and I know that the teams created a solution for it. I just don't know what that is. So yes, you're absolutely right, that is an issue, but there are solutions for it. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember what that solution is, so I will come back to you on that.
No problem. So Stuart, again, if you could please email us, that would be fantastic. And we'll, as I say, we often do that. And then we have what I find with these webinars, they really start such interesting conversations afterwards. So someone will say, what about this? And then, that's where the communication starts, and it's fantastic. Okay, coming towards the end of the questions. So it's been such a great session today. I've loved it, and I'm a bit disappointed. Not a single question about a Proctor product, but that's not to say it hasn't been enjoyable. So it's always nice to see one. I've had one, Pam, maybe you can take this from Rob. Net zero carbon will only be achieved by upgrading the existing homes, and the performance gap shows that we're currently vastly underestimating the actual carbon emissions of both new and existing building stock. Therefore, how can we be sure that we will actually achieve net zero carbon, not just on paper, but in reality?
I think it's
the easy one for you.
Yeah, I know. I think it's the holy grail that everybody's been working at towards for years. I mean, I've been to so many conferences where it's bridging the gap. How do we actually make as designed as built? It's very difficult with existing, because quite often you don't know what you're going to encounter until you start working on it. And sometimes, especially heritage buildings, there's only so much that you can actually do before you start damaging some of the features that make it important. Like, do you really want to rip down your ornate cornicing just so that you can take your insulation up into your rafter zone? Or is there something else that you can use, like, just for you, Keira, our space therm that you can tuck down between the joist ends and things like that to prevent cold bridging? And is there something that you can do to limit a bridge through from a pier or something like that? So I really think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on refurbishment. It tends to have been slightly forgotten about in favour of new build and improving the efficiencies in new build. I know that there are some companies out there that are looking at how to put in systems internally that can bypass it, but I think it's looking to see what's achievable without either losing living space for the occupants, losing features on the outside with external insulation, and as I mentioned before, making sure that you don't build in problems with moisture content or moisture being held in walls because they've over-insulated and they've not got any heat to them. So I think, sometimes, as much as we want to bring existing housing stock down to net zero or near net zero, it's just not possible. We have to accept that we have to work on offsetting some of those types of buildings with products like the Etopia system, where you're actually getting benefit, is actually generating more energy, it's actually getting less carbon. So we're sort of like taking from one industry or one methodology and helping that to offset a more traditional and more in place looking at it. So it's the holy grail for us all. It's the holy grail for people to move forward. But a lot of it also comes down to installation. How well can you install? How well are your trades working? We keep saying it. There's no point in having a square hole for a round pipe and leaving it gappy. It's. It's a great question, but unfortunately there's no silver bullet for it.
Well, just on gappy things and airtightness, James, if I can just come to you for one of the final questions, please. Is airtightness testing changing? Paul has asked.
Yes, it is. It is sort of changing. It depends upon sort of what you mean by changing. But regarding the Technical Memorandum 23, they're now integrating pulse testing as well as the pulse testing method, as well as the existing, obviously, the blower door method that is being utilised at the moment. So yeah, the testing procedures are, the monopolies aren't there anymore. So it's sort of spreading its wings to allow people with other test methodologies in order to come in to prove the air passivity of the build. But in regards to the actual legislation regarding the test criteria, obviously, if you had a site, a development site, you were building multiple houses on there. The previous legislation was a percentage of a build type needed to be tested in order to pass, and the rest of the build types didn't. But the rest of that build type didn't. Sorry, the new legislation stipulates or will stipulate that every single build, whether it be 50 of one type, 60 of another type, 70 of another type, every single one of those builds will need to be tested. The other side of things is obviously to frown upon people walking around with silicon guns and rolls of tape when the test is being done or prior to, because obviously those tapes will not be there after the test has been completed, and obviously the occupant will come into the property thinking that they've achieved a certain air passivity rating, hopefully, and obviously with those tapes not there, then they won't achieve that air passivity rating. So it's about that performance gap again, and making sure that the build is actually done properly in order to make sure that those unplanned air movements aren't there. So it's, again, in regards to the overheating consultation, it's worth stating, obviously, that NAP, the National Adaptation Programme, stipulated that the overheating within the UK is going to become a problem, obviously, with climate changes that are occurring. But the most interesting part is how that overheating regulation is going to work in conjunction with Part F. So that's obviously something that we'll be looking at closely over the next couple of years in order to get a happy medium between the two, because obviously they're not allowing the utilisation of air conditioning in order to reduce down the overheating, purely due to the fact that obviously it puts more pressure onto the electrical system. But at the same time, obviously, if you make the building more airtight, then it's all a play off with each other. So it's going to be some interesting times in the future to see exactly how a standard can be met between the two.
Paul's just pointing out that British includes Scottish. So, Paul, you are entirely correct. Yes.
I know. I was just
being polite. Technically, we're
bit on the spot here. Sorry.
We don't get too offended, but yeah, thank you very much. We are all British indeed. Final question, and I think maybe if this one can be answered between Pam and Rosanna. So how easy is it, and it's a good question, to get some of the newer technologies accepted by planners and building control?
Want me to go first? Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's a really good question, and a lot of our day in the technical team is speaking to building control professionals and planning officers, and trying to get people to understand some of our products that are deemed innovative, despite in some cases having been sold for about 25 years now. But the message takes a while to filter down. But there is definitely more of a shift. There's definitely more of a shift to integrated learning. Things like Zoom, these webinars are a great way to get the sort of the information about other systems, other methodologies out there to a wider audience. I think working from home, it allows us to sort of dip into things as and when we have spare time. Manufacturers, like Etopia, like ourselves, are driving it forward, as are trade bodies like CWCT, MCM, MRA, other ones like that, they're really lobbying a lot and getting involved in a lot of sort of the sides that help drive this forward. And a lot of it has to be driven by government as well. If there's not the government requirement there, the government forcing the arm almost, it's never going to happen. There's a definite reflection now in standards of acceptance of offsite and quicker methodologies, more modern methods. So we're seeing more coherent writing in British standards, which makes it easier for acceptance or testing or this approval and this knowing that the system works. That's prevalent in Approved Document B, they've really tightened up on a lot of the language in there, made it less ambiguous compared to what it was. The new BS 5250 update, when it arrives, has developed from control of condensation to moisture management, because they realise it's not just condensation that's issues in buildings, it's moisture from all sources. Even within it itself, the evolution of different types of materials, the inclusion of APLRs, air permeable low resistance underlays like a roof shield, that's never really been part of it. Inclusion of sort of more in-depth roof and wall types. We've got in there in the wall section, which Ian, our technical director, heads up. We've got rain screen in there. We've got CLT. We've got SIPs. So these are all the methodologies, all the types of technologies that are being used in new systems, and therefore the inclusion of these in British standards means that this should help to smooth the way a bit more towards the acceptance of offsite and then MMC buildings.
I think I'd just like to add on that as well. It like you say, it's shifting. Like there is challenges that local governments and councils have to overcome with targets and things like that. And a lot of the products are going to be innovative ones that are going to provide a lot of that solution. So as long as you're, I think there's always going to be hoops to jump through, but as long as you're actively solving a challenge that they face, or through policy, regulation, through consumer demand, whatever it might be, then you're more likely to work in collaboration with them to be able to, get that product signed off, because it solves a challenge that they're currently facing. So it's all about communication. When we speak to local authorities and things like that, we try to understand, what are your challenges? For instance, like making net zero sites and developments and things like that may not be their number one challenge in that jurisdiction at the moment. They might have something else that they need to really contend with. So it's understanding, where your solution fits, who is really requires your solution at the moment, and how you can work with them to actually get that through so that they can achieve their goals and you can achieve yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rosanna. I think your dog can hear my cat meowing at the door, because he was looking, ears were up looking, and I had to mute myself there. So bless. Okay, so we've come to the end of today's webinar and the Q&A. Thank you so much, Rosanna, for joining us. That was a fantastic presentation, something that, obviously we knew a little bit about Project Etopia, and we're so happy to hear more about it. And especially for, the people that joined the webinar, it's just fantastic to see your product in practice and how you're launching it and, taking it around the world, etc. Really, really interesting. And thank you, James and Pam, as always, for answering the questions. I know it's not easy when they're just coming through off the hoof, so thank you very much. All the attendees will receive a follow-up email. As I've mentioned, there will be a replay there, as part of that email, so please feel free to circulate it to anyone you may like. There's also a short survey. Really like it if you can fill this out. If you have 5 minutes, it's really quick. Feel free to be honest, if there's anything we could be improving, anything you want to hear about, as long as it's constructive, we really appreciate it. So thank you. You can sign up now for our next webinar, which is in 3 weeks. So Friday the 16th of April at 10 a.m. and the topic is aerogels in building refurbishment. So that'll be hosted by Carol Mikulak, who did our last webinar. So I'm shortly going off on maternity leave, so she will be taking over for the next couple of months. So it won't be my cat meowing in the background, maybe in a couple of months' time. So. So thank you very much. It gives us a huge amount of help if you can like subscribe to our YouTube channel and a thumbs up or like this video. And yeah, we'll see you in 3 weeks. And I hope everyone has a lovely weekend. Thanks again to you, Rosanna. And yeah, have a great remainder of the day and a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.